It was a seemingly ordinary morning when Jill returned from running errands. As she approached her front door at approximately 11:32 a.m., an assailant lay in wait. Without warning, he pressed a gun to her head and pulled the trigger, shooting her at point-blank range. On April 26, 1999, Jill Dando, one of the UK's most beloved television presenters, was tragically murdered outside her home in Fulham, London. Jill's lifeless body was discovered moments later by a neighbor who heard her scream. The police were called immediately, and within minutes, they arrived at the scene to find the renowned broadcaster lying on the ground, her life extinguished in an instant. What led to this tragic event? And why does the search for justice remain elusive even decades later? Join us as we delve into the heartbreaking story of Jill Dando. Chapter 1. The investigation begins. The police launched one of the biggest murder inquiries ever staged in Britain. Witnesses made over 2,500 statements, and investigators identified over 1,000 possible suspects. Forensic teams combed the scene for any evidence that would lead them to Jill's killer. The lack of actual eyewitnesses to the shooting complicated the investigation. Detectives began investigating Jill's personal life. Investigators interviewed friends and family members in depth as they pursued anyone who might have wanted to harm her: a disgruntled ex-lover, a disgruntled co-worker, or someone with an even more sinister motive. The media frenzy surrounding the case put additional pressure on law enforcement, which worked around the clock to bring answers. In the days following Jill's murder, police opened an incident room in Fulham and viewed hundreds of hours of CCTV footage taken by cameras around the road. They were searching for anything or anybody that could have been in or near the scene at the time of the shooting. But it was difficult. Many of those cameras were faulty or too poor in resolution to pick up any suspect. Chapter 2. Media Frenzy and Public Outcry. News of the murder of Jill Dando greatly stirred up a media frenzy. Journalists camped outside her home and followed every lead from law enforcement officials, and the interest in the case by the public continued to grow exponentially. Jill Dando was not just another murder victim. She represented something deeper within the core of British society, and unresolved questions about safety. Television programs gave entire segments discussing possible motives behind her murder. Public memorials began cropping up all over town as fans and admirers paid their respects to Jill's life and legacy. People laid flowers outside BBC studios where she had worked for many years, and messages of condolence filled social media. The outpouring of grief reflected not only affection for Jill, but a communal sense of lost safety in their communities and loss of trust in society's protection of its citizens from violence. Chapter 3. The Suspects. Within weeks of Jill's murder, several theories followed. Investigators turned up the heat on Jill's personal life. Was it a jilted lover or someone from her past? Friends and family were all interviewed as the police looked for any clues that could explain why anyone would want to harm her. One of the early, most likely suspects was Barry George, living in the neighborhood, who had a history of stalking women. He was convicted in 2001, largely based on gunshot residue found on his clothing, but had significant issues at his trial concerning the reliability of the evidence. In 2008, the courts overturned his conviction after new evidence questioned his guilt. With Barry George now cleared of the crime, there was much speculation over other possible suspects. Some speculated that Jill's murder might have come from organized crime or even a reprisal against her Crime Watch work. The investigation also examined whether the authorities linked Jill's murder to other unsolved cases or whether someone targeted Jill due to her high-profile job as a television presenter. Each of the theories opened new strands of inquiry, but investigators were no farther along than who had the motive to kill such a great figure. Chapter 4. A Nation in Mourning. Jill Dando's murder engraved itself in British society, throwing the whole nation into mourning. Thousands attended her funeral service held at Westminster Abbey on May 26, 1999, evidence of how much she had come to mean to many people. The public display of grief not only reflected love for Jill, but also a sense of collective loss of community security, and loss of social assurance that society would be able to protect its citizens from violence. Media attention on the progress of the funeral and ongoing investigations reminded everyone that they had not yet served justice. Over the succeeding weeks, many personalities shared their memories of Jill and described her as a kind professional who they would miss as a presenter, friend, and colleague. Chapter 5: Unsolved Mystery. As time went by and no one resolved Jill Dando's murder case, interest gradually slowed down but never entirely ceased. Over successive years, various documentaries investigated different aspects of her death and life, each piecing together the clues left behind while raising new questions about what happened that day outside her home. Most of the renewed interest in unsolved cases in recent years has been because of advances in forensic technology. Could this be the turn that brings investigators closer than they've ever been? Despite the best efforts of law enforcement agencies, more than 20 years after Jill's tragic death, the case has remained officially unsolved, a grim reminder that some mysteries remain well beyond our grasp, even when they involve people we hold most dear. The absence of closure has been very distressing to those close to Jill. Chapter 6: Legacy and Impact. Ailing Dando's legacy reaches far beyond television screens, mixed with compassion for fellow human beings and a relentless pursuit of justice for victims everywhere. Her story inspires today's journalists who strive to tell a story and to be a voice for change in society and a voice heard when it is not. Considering the discussions going on today about violence against women, Jill's memory is a cautionary tale about the dangers women in the public eye may face, and it highlights the importance advocacy efforts play in fighting such issues head-on through educational awareness that will empower individuals to take action against injustices they may see in their daily lives. Jill's case has also raised discussions about media responsibility in reporting violence against women. Chapter 7: Ongoing Investigations. Although the case of Jill Dando's murder has been considered cold for years now, it is still open. Detectives review the evidence periodically, anticipating that one new lead might bring insights into this challenging case. There has been an increasing lobby for the need to channel more funds towards solving such cold cases. Moreover, technological advances such as DNA analysis have been game changers in criminal investigations. These things allow law enforcement agencies to go back and revisit old evidence, sometimes yielding new leads that may have eluded previous investigators due to flaws in the methods available at the time of the original investigation. Although Jill is no longer with us, she lives on through cherished memories and continued attempts to seek justice for victims everywhere. The search for answers speaks volumes about the strength of those who refuse to let her story disappear. By keeping Jill's memory alive, we commit to letting her story be a tragedy and an act of hope for justice and a safer world for all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories.